It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Wednesday, August 14th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Health is Happiness, the Evangelism Scripts Word Study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right. How are you doing, everyone? And yes, it is a wonderful Wednesday. We've hit the midweek stride. Yes, we're already at the middle of the week and pretty much the middle of the month, as crazy as that sounds. I hope you guys have enjoyed your week and your month thus far. Don't forget, tomorrow is Q&A Thursday, and we have it every single week, so get those questions ready. Send me those questions. I'm ready to answer as many as I can, and in the best way possible. And the ones that I don't know, I will be asking other people, other leaders, what the answer to that question is too. So I am super happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up and support each other each and every day. This week's Sunday message title is what? It's Change and Condition Reward. It is Faith, Condition, and Action. I hope that you guys are setting conditions and also having that absolute hope and understanding that God will repay all of us for all the conditions that we have set. So one thing you guys need to know right now is I am in my new place, and it's still a temporary place. It's a place that it's kind of like a motel. So there's I don't have any closets or anything yet, but this is also a temporary place until I find my home. And that's going to take some time too. But I am looking forward to, God opening doors or closing doors so that I can find the right place that fits me. So think about this, guys. Last week I was telling you how overwhelmed I was, and already things are moving so quickly. Even so grateful to American Providence for letting me use the American Providence house while I was, looking for a new place. So I am grateful, thankful for all the work, for all the love and the support they gave me there too. And I would say that I am very grateful and thankful to everyone out there who was praying for me. Everyone out there who was encouraging me and just telling me that, congrats or whatever, that, all that stuff really, really, it helps out. Even just someone encouraging me or even congratulating me, even that is such a huge mental help. Meaning, it gives me wow, this person really cares about me. They went out of their way to write me a text message or send me a voice message or whatever it was. And I'm wow, that's really encouraging. That's something that I feel the support from. So that was something I was yeah, I am grateful and I am thankful that there are people doing this and really caring about what's going on. I'm grateful and thankful even right now to all the people out there who are still supporting on Patreon and using all the contents on there too. Still, I am thinking about what I can do more for that content also. But of course, I have this mission going along with it. But I am still doing all my YouTube stuff. So I hope that you guys are enjoying this channel as it almost feels like I don't know if you feel like this too. I feel like we are doing this mission together. That's what I feel like hey, we're, I'm telling you what's in my heart, what's in my thoughts, what's going on in my head. I'm yeah, what about this? And I really feel this, and I can feel your encouragement. I feel like you guys are taking these steps along together with me. So it kind of does feel like we are doing this mission together, and I am grateful, super thankful for this too. So, it's week 2. Week 2 is in full swing. Week 2. Right, already middle of the week, had my meeting foreign members, just meeting regular members, and I would have to say already, it's only been a week and a half, and already the freshness and newness of the situation has almost all worn off. It has. I'm kind of getting into, okay, so what's my mission? What do I need to do? What am I trying to feel here? What are the things that I'm trying to get myself to understand a lot better also? Right? So it's very, very interesting for me. I am starting to learn as I go, and I am thankful for that. right? I am thankful that, it's only been a week and a half, but still, the people already working here in headquarters and IMD and stuff that are helping me, they're like, I watch them and I'm like, whoa, like they are so busy. Chat rooms, announcements, this, and like I have like 5, 6 new like huge chat rooms on Telegram. I'm like, what? And I have so many of these things popping up. They're all in Korean, so I can't read it as fast as I was reading it in English. I'm just like, what? And I'm like going to these meetings all in Korean. They're really important, asking for my thoughts on certain things. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Right? So it's still, some of it is overwhelming, right? So some of it is overwhelming, and some of the things I am looking at like, okay, what about this? What about that? But overall, like I said, I am still crazy thankful. I really am, right? And one thing that I probably am not so happy, not like unhappy, but it's so hot here. It's so hot here in Korea. It's blazing. It's hotter than Malaysia. For sure, it's hotter than Malaysia. Well, the temperature's not. Well, it could, because I know that it went up to 37 and 39 2 weeks ago. But it's definitely not as humid. So the sun just burns. Like here, it burns. In Malaysia, it doesn't burn. Malaysia, it's like, it's so humid, it's just sticky. Here, it burns. Right? So it feels like someone is using a magnifying glass on my skin and just trying to burn my neck off kind of thing, right? Malaysia, more humid. The heat evenly disperses the heat over my entire body, where here in Korea, the sun is really like, it feels like the sun hates me and the sun wants to kill me kind of thing, right? But yeah, I'm walking, even for me going into the retreats, man, walking around Wonmyeong during the retreats, completely sweaty. I understand why everyone's at the lake swimming. There is no choice. You've got to swim, get into the water because it's that hot. Or like we go into the air-conditioned places, so packed, unbelievably packed. People everywhere, sitting on the floor, lying on the floor, sleeping on chairs, everything. They're all there. It just looks chaotic. But I would say seeing the situation, even though it's like so chaotic, you see all these kids lying down, they're playing in the what do you call it? They're playing in the water, in the lake, they're jumping on the trampolines, they're praying on the lawn, going through tours. It's like this beautiful chaos going on during the retreats. It's beautiful. And it gives me so much nostalgia from running at that age where you're so happy just to be, in another country during a retreat, running around. You don't care about the sun. Like that, the nostalgia is so huge. I love it. I really do. And it's funny because when I was younger, I would look at the older people and they're the ones not going into the water. They're the ones trying to cover themselves from the sun. They're the ones that don't want to just walk around and run around and do all these other different things, right? They don't want to do anything, any of the quote unquote fun stuff like the young people like to do. And it's kind of funny because now here I am in the position of the old people. Like one of the old people. Like I'm like, man, how life comes back full circle. I see things differently because of my life experiences, what I went through, the age of my bones and my body and everything else. And it's so interesting because I've been in Providence for 26 years. I lived my entire 20s and 30s and beginning of like all the way halfway through my 40s in this history, running for this history. And I've been running in this history for like a quarter century. And it's interesting because you get to see how things grow, develop, finish, and restart, right? You see how the news cycles begin. And at this age right now, I have a much better idea of how things work or how things are. And when I see things go full circle, I see the new people running full-time Providence and the attitude and mindset they start with. I had exactly the same thing. Excited just to come in, make history, have fiery passion. I experienced that myself. Going all out without any knowledge or any experience or wisdom, but just going out and making history. And that, that's something I think is absolutely required. Then, as you grow and develop, this is where you see a fork where people have to make a decision. Because there comes a point when you've run for so long and you have to make a choice, right? Making a choice, not really making a choice, but you kind of start to rethink about things. Because if, in some matters where they're not working out or they haven't worked out for a long time, you see how things happen and you see the need for change. And you either make the choice of trying to make a change so you don't do the same thing over and over again, or you think that it can't change, or you don't know how to make it change, so you just continue on doing what you've always done, right? And there's like those 2 points. Like you're gonna reach that fork in the road where you have to make the choice of, should I keep doing this or not, right? Should I? Is it really going to change or not? So it's either you keep doing the same things, or you keep doing things the same way, even though you know it's not working that well, or you're going to actively make some type of change, right? So I think that's something that's very, very interesting. And I think that eventually everyone reaches that second decision or the first decision of, I got to make some change. I think eventually everyone does, because there comes a point in your maturity and development when you realize that you don't want to put in that much effort with so little fruit, right? Like that's what no one wants that. No one wants to get to that point where you put in so much effort but nothing comes out of it, right? So I think that's it's such an interesting thing, because I see myself and how I've developed, and I see one of the biggest things that I feared. Like I didn't fear the change itself, because you're like, change is necessary. But it's the fear that you put so much effort and energy into trying to change things. But the fear is that you put so much energy in and nothing changes. So all of that effort comes to nothing. And then, possibly you'll be branded as some type of disruptor or someone who's off or something along that line. And I find that really interesting, especially because, when you become someone who's a disruptor or someone who wants to change, like you got to be a super risk taker for that, to be the first or to be someone who takes a step for that. Knowing that people don't really like change and don't want to relearn or learn new things because it takes time to adjust once again, right? Like even for me right now, last week, I had to completely adjust in 3 days, moved all the way to Korea. I found a place to stay, but then just today, I'm already moving to a new place, packed up all my bags and moved to this place here too. And it makes me think about this research that's done on how people adapt to change, especially like technology and advancements, right? So when you think about this, there's 5 major types. There's 5 different types of people. And this is going to be part of my poll question, right? So I want you guys to think about this. Think about yourself and where do you fit in, right? There's 5 types of people when it comes to those adopting new change, new technologies, new ways to do things, right? And they're called this. The first is like innovators, visionaries are the first group. The second group is early adopters. Then there's the early majority, late majority, and then there's the laggards, right? The laggards basically means like the lazy ones or the ones that are like really fall far behind, all right? So where do you fit in? So the first one is visionaries. Visionaries or innovators, this is only 2.5% of the population. They are the major risk takers. They are the fastest to do new things. And of course, they're going to fail at a lot of things because not all innovations are right? But they're willing to try it. And this group of people is usually the youngest in age. They're very good financially, highly educated, highest social class. Because let's just say that if you have enough money, right? If you have enough money, then you can afford to make mistakes and see things fail, right? Willing to take that risk, willing to fail. And I would say that people will look at them and say, wow, they failed so many times that they shouldn't be trusted with future things. But that's just what visionaries and innovators do. Only 2.5% are willing to take that risk, try new things in new ways, right? They're the ones who are setting it up. They're the ones who are doing it before everyone else. Right? They're the ones who are connected to the people in that industry or the leadership or whatever like that. And a lot of times these people are the ones that they are like opinion leaders, right? They're the opinion leaders. They're the ones that everyone looks up to, kind of thing, right? And that's only 2.5%, right? Which means it's a very, very small group, right? And that we'll talk about this a little bit more, right? Which leads to the second type of group. See, are all you guys early adopters? No, I'm not asking if you are, but I'm saying that the second group is early adopters, and that's only 13.5%. What does that mean? It basically means that 86.5% are not early adopters, right? They are the quickest to adopt after the innovators, right? So the early adopters, who are they? The early adopters are the ones like Elon Musk is the visionary. He's the one that makes Tesla, and all the people that are involved in making the science behind it and the electric cars and all these things, like they're the ones that went in first, right? And then after them are the early adopters, and they're the ones that are going to come in right after the innovators. And interestingly enough, early adopters are usually young too. They're young, educated, financially, they're pretty high financially. They're high social class and connected to the innovators. And usually these people too are the opinion leaders. People respect their opinion on matters, right? So, you got to think about this. You might think to yourself, oh, am I an early adopter? But you also have to think to yourself is, usually the early adopters are the ones that are influential. People come to you asking you, oh, you got this? What was that? Oh, what's it like? Oh, you tried this? Oh, you tried that, kind of thing, right? Like, I would say that I am definitely an innovator or visionary when it comes to like internet ministry and these types of things, but I might not be in other areas, right? But I am someone who likes to initiate and go in first and make the mistakes before everyone else, right? And which means I'm the one that probably gets into a lot of trouble also. And that's why I'm the rebel pastor. Right? So this is a small group. It's the innovators, 2.5%, and the early adopters is 13.5%. Together, they're only 15% of the world. 15%. Which means the next group is a large group called the majority. That's like 68% is the majority. And the majority is split into two groups. The first half is called the early majority, 34%. And they take some time, but will eventually adopt to the new innovations. They're connected to opinion leaders. They're the ones talking to the people who have like some type of opinion that really matters. They have their social status is usually above average. They're not high social status like the early adopters and the visionaries. They're not that high social status, right? They're above average, right? And then you have the late majority, which is the last 34% of the majority. And these people are a little bit more skeptical. They wait for everyone else to try it first before they get into it. They're a lot more safer and below average social status and probably like lower middle income status and lower, right? So, that's a very interesting thing is they're part of the majority, but the late majority come waiting for everyone else to try it first. It works out. Like, I don't want the iPhone 1, but I'm going to wait for the iPhone 2 to come out just to work out all the kinks. And then I'll get the next one, probably the iPhone 3 or the 5 or whatever it is, right? So that's kind of like the late majority. And last but not least, 16% remaining is the laggards, right? And they typically have an aversion to change. And they tend to be, not always, tend to be advanced in age. So, kind of like old people don't like change, and they like to be, where they are, right? And they tend to be focused on traditions, likely to have lowest social status, lowest financial fluidity, and they're going to be oldest of all the adopters, and they're probably not in contact with a lot of people. They're more only in contact with family and close friends and stuff like that too. And it's very interesting because when you see these 5 different groups of people, I would say that, yeah, it's very, very interesting to see this. And I'm like, wow, that's so interesting to see these different groups of people and how they adapt to change, like to new innovations, technologies, and change. And I would think that, when you think about like how people want change in Providence, you're going to see the early innovators. They're the ones that are really the disruptors, where people kind of look negatively upon them because they're like, why are you changing something that's working right now? Why are you changing it? They're the ones that are ahead of the curve, which is only 2.5%, which also means that you have to understand that they're the ones ahead of the curve, and they're the ones that we have to understand that they're the ones that are really ahead of everyone else. Like I said, super high social status. And I would say most likely when you look at it in Providence terms, they're probably the ones that are connected. Like the more you're connected high up, the more high, like technically speaking, you'd say social status in Providence, right? Like that's how it kind of is. And, that's kind of like the innovators are way up there. And then you have the early adopters, early majority, late majority, and then the laggards, right? So I think it's really interesting to see these types of research that's done and these statistics. And it kind of gives you an idea. Remember, none of these are bad. It's not like, oh, you're bad because you're not this or not that. It's good to see where you're at, right? Which one you fall under. And I find it interesting to see where all of us fit in on this curve. And I would say that in one sense, if you magnify it, technically speaking, I think we're all innovators when it comes to this time period. We are in the new history before anyone else. So in terms of religion, we are in that top 2.5%. So we're already in that innovator, right? Because we're here early, before it got big, before it becomes, like especially the foreign countries, right? We're there before it got big. The only difference would be now that we're in this history, where do we stand inside? While we're in this history, are we innovating? While we're in this history, are we following, or we're looking for the new trend? We're not sure what it is yet. Or when we're in this new history, are we waiting for everyone else to try it out first, right? So I think that's a good poll question that we're going to put up right now. So I think it should be in there. The poll question should be up is, what are you? Like, where do you fit in with these 5 different categories? And, be honest to yourself. There is no such thing as something greater or better or worse. It's just where you fall on the scale, right? And it's okay. There's no big deal like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. No, it's none of this, right? And we're probably going to see, like, it'll be interesting to see the numbers for that too, right? Which also means that we finished the last week's poll. How many people have you evangelized? And these people, have to have passed, obviously. And number 1 is one person, which is 35%, which is great. So a third of the people have evangelized at least one person. And then another 20%, so a fifth of the people have evangelized 2. But the one that's interesting, I thought this number was actually too big. I actually thought it was too big, which is more than 6 people is 18%, which is close to a fifth of the people. I thought this number was way too big, but then I thought about, but most of us are in smaller countries. And we don't have a lot of people, which means it's usually the same people involved in most of the evangelism. So it does actually make some sense that there are a lot of people that have evangelized over 6 or over, right? So I found that to be quite interesting, but I think maybe that's the reason. And of course, when you look at MSD right now, MSD, a lot of the people here are leaders. A lot of the people here are the ones running hard. A lot of the people here are the ones that really want to, we're thinking about new things constantly, because just the fact that you're listening to MSD, I think you'd be an early adopter, for sure. At least an early adopter when it comes to Providence podcasts and such, right? Like I think we're the first Providence podcast. Isn't that true? Which is kind of crazy. We are the first Providence podcast. I think that's crazy. I really do. I think that's historical also. And then I'm thankful that it comes from the foreign countries. I am. Either way, right? So those are a couple of things that I have been thinking about. And, but when it comes to evangelism, with last week's question too, personally, I'm not a big fan of counting how many we've evangelized. I'm just not, right? Like, maybe it's a personal thing, but I think in the end, it's all recorded in heaven, and that's where it matters more. And if you have really evangelized and helped, guess what's going to happen? you're going to be blessed no matter what. Even if no one else acknowledges it, when God acknowledges it, you're going to be blessed. That's a guarantee. But I do understand that for younger people, it does matter. I do understand that. When you were younger, when I was younger, it mattered. How many people you evangelized, like, oh yeah, I did this. And as you grow up, you tend to outgrow those thoughts, and it's just different with age. And it's not just because we're age, it's because we have different experiences and wisdom, and we don't need as much affirmation and acknowledgement when you're older, right? It's just not needed as much. And I think, I think it's something that we do have to understand that for younger people, it does matter more. It does. For the older people, to be honest, it doesn't. And one thing that I didn't like in the past was it's almost like you're dangling a carrot that, if you evangelize a lot, then you're going to get, you can connect to Sunseam this, and this, which is kind of true because Sunseam does, it's something that Sunseam really, and for sure, it's important, right? But I do think that we have to be those that are very smart with how we educate people with evangelism and stuff too. And especially in lean times, like the times we're living in right now, it's not easy. Evangelism hasn't been that good. So, it's something where I think we have to be much more careful about evangelism and how we talk about it. And also, we have to be those that really acknowledge the effort put in, because that's something that matters to God, is the effort you put in. You may not be able to, evangelism is not something that's a guarantee. It's just not, because it's up to the person. There's free will and such. And we have to understand that it's not guaranteed, but the thing we do need to understand is we have to be those that that know that what matters first and foremost is that we have the heart to do it. Like, God, we want to save people just as we have been saved, but also have the understanding that we do not control people's choices or decisions. We just don't. But God looks at all efforts that are made, right? So I think it's something that does matter. Okay, so the one thing one thing I do like about this podcast is I love how our thoughts begin to think more deeply, or we begin to think about other situations more. Like the one thing that I think that I really, really enjoy right now is my conversations with other people about anonymous surveys. If you haven't listened to it yet, it's on the Monday podcast segment number 1 about how anonymous surveys are actually more negative than they are positive, right? And if anonymous surveys, we think it's going to open it up more for people and such, but what anonymous surveys and feedback lead to mistrust in leadership, mistrust to members, people not feeling safe to speak out, things not getting done, and this is not like, oh my God, and I'm not going to say this. I'm not going to say that, because of anonymous feedback and surveys, this is why everything's this. I'm not going to say that. Totally not going to say that. What I'm going to say to you guys is, we can help the situation a lot better. And sometimes we're just unconsciously making it more difficult by the systems we put in place, right? And we can help ourselves by putting in better systems also. So, as I'm learning the ropes in my position too, and I definitely, I'm learning as I go, and I'm very, very grateful for the people around me that are really helping me out. And, for me too, coming from a very Western point of view, I do see some things I'm like, yeah, you know what, it might be better for, especially Westerners, for this, and this kind of thing. So, for me, transparency, confidentiality, policies, and guidelines are very important, because then everyone knows what the guidelines are, and it helps us to guide our decisions, and no one's going to say that, hey, how come you made that decision? And we don't have to keep explaining ourselves, but instead we have the guideline that shows this is why, these are the types of things that we accept for this. These are the types of letters for this. This is a type for this, right? And I think that's going to help out in the future also, all right? Either way. So yeah, that's kind of my segment number one. Hope it's something that you guys are gaining from also. If you guys want to talk more about the anonymous surveys, I would say that's a great start because it's not a good, the research is showing it's not a good thing to have anonymous surveys and feedback. But that might only be for Western countries and not Asian countries. I'm not sure. But it is something that I have been discussing with some other leaders too. All right. So there it is. We do have what's next? Oh, Evangelism Scripts Word Study coming right after this. And then after that, so before we get into that, let's get into the first music break of the day. All right, so let's get into today's Evangelism Scripts word study. And of course, a lot of schools are going to be starting probably in August sometime. So we do want to get into some training with how are we going to be able to evangelize. And the evangelism scripts I'm doing right now are scripts that you can use to help connect people right away. Right? So that's kind of one of the things we do want is how do we connect people right away? And a lot of times, like the two examples I gave you before and the long scripts I gave you, this is probably about 10 to 15 minutes. Those are ones that, if you're a little bit more advanced or skilled in that area, you'll be able to do that. But I want to help you guys out and review the two things that you can use that will really help you to kind of help you to grab these people. Okay? So, I would say that probably one of the simplest ways that you can evangelize by getting someone interested in the Bible. So you're probably looking for someone who is a Christian, and this is going to be probably way more. It's going to work way better in a Western country that is already Christian, and it's okay to talk about Christianity. And there's a ton of Christians on campus too. So the two that I showed you was the Tower of Babel and Adam and Eve, right? And these two are very, very easy. It doesn't take a lot of time. It just involves you showing that something that doesn't make sense. And they'll be like, what does this mean? And when they get that, then they'll be like, oh, I want to learn this if they're really interested or not, all right? So the first one is, remember we did Adam and Eve, like we're talking about a month and a half, 2 months ago, right? And the question I bring to people is, hey, so here's a cool question that I want to ask you is, Adam and Eve, are they the first people here on earth? And they're going to be like, well, most likely they're going to say yes. And if they say no, you ask them why. And then you can say that, well, science tells us that the world is 4.6 billion years old. And human beings, like the Homo sapien, has been around for like 700,000 years. But the Bible says that the earth and human beings are only 6,000 years old. Now, this is huge. This discrepancy between science and the Bible is so huge. So what does that mean? So it's very easy for us to say, oh, come on, it's the Bible. The Bible's the truth, the Word of God. But then why is it that science and the evidence that we have says otherwise? So let me show you an interesting verse you can take a look at. And all you need to do is memorize this one verse, which is Genesis chapter 4, verse 15 and 16. And Genesis 4, 15 and 16 has two big hints, right? So in Genesis chapter 4, verse 15, this is Cain after he kills his brother, and then Cain is cast out, and Cain says something very interesting is like, dude, no, he doesn't say dude, he says, God, if people find me, they're going to kill me. And then God says in verse 15, whoever finds Cain and kills you will be, repaid sevenfold kind of thing, right? And the big question there is, who are these other people? If they're the first people on the earth ever, then why would Cain say, what about all these other people who will come out, find me, and kill me, right? So that doesn't make any sense. Who are these other people? And Cain even knows about them. Verse 16 is more interesting because it talks about an actual place called Nod, where he goes to find a wife, which doesn't make any sense either, because in order for there to be a town with a name that's called Nod, someone has to name it, which means that there are already towns and places around them too, right? What does it mean? That he went to another town, found a wife, and made a family, right? So it's like if Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel are the first people on the earth, where do these other people come from? Does that mean the Bible is wrong? Or does it mean our perspective on what we think the Bible is saying is wrong, right? And this is where you say, hey, we got a great Bible study that I want to introduce you to, and we talk about these types of questions also, right? And that's one way you can get someone interested in the Bible, right? The second one, which I did last week or the week before, Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel, and the question that comes from this is, did all languages begin from the Tower of Babel? Right? This is all Genesis chapter 11, okay? And there's only one verse you need to memorize, which is Genesis chapter 11, verse 6. We'll get into that a little bit later, right? So Tower of Babel, did all languages begin from Babel? Because the story is, everyone spoke the same language, and then after the Tower of Babel, everyone spoke different languages, and they spread to all over the world, and that's why the world has different languages kind of thing, right? And did all language begin from Babel? And the answer is no. How do we know? Because Babel happened after the judgment of the flood at the time of Noah, which is 4,300 years ago. Babel is after that, which is like earlier, which is later. However, there are three ancient languages that are known to men, that we absolutely know, and they existed before Noah's flood, which is Tamil, Sanskrit, and Egyptian, and they're about 5,000 years old, right? So it's very interesting that we have these three languages already existing, but people are saying that language began from Babel. And so there's the first thing that doesn't make sense. The second thing that doesn't make sense is Genesis chapter 11, verse 6. And what God says is, if as speaking the same language, right? So he's saying these people are one. They are unified as if speaking the same language. The big thing we're looking at here is not about unity. It's not about, the main point God is making is unity. If they are one, like they're speaking the same language, then nothing can stop them. And it's not talking about, is it really a literal language? Because language does not account for unity. Just because people speak the same language does not mean that they're unified, right? We can all attest for this and look at your own country where everyone speaks the same language. Are they one because they speak the same language? And the answer is no. Actually, when you look at America, it is completely split and we are all speaking English, right? So it's very interesting that the key point here is unity, if as speaking the same language. So what does that mean, right? So language isn't the issue, but what does it mean? And of course, you do the same thing. We got a Bible study. We'll talk about these types of points. We'd love for you to come out if you're really interested or not, kind of thing, right? So that's kind of the thing that I would really, really want to bring up. And I would say that if anything, the most important thing is practice these every day, right? The longer scripts, of course, the ones that I showed you in the past, they're going to take some time to really be able to do it because, even for me, like I said before, when I'm on campus and I teach those longer scripts, I'll get the full attention for the entire 20 minutes. And people who are not as experienced will not be able to do that. But these shorter scripts, they're going to be much easier for us to show people. And the one tip I give you is when I was in sales and marketing, this was one of the things we did every day. When the day started, we're doing our scripts continuously for the first 15 minutes of every day at work. And we're doing this 6 days a week. So what I would say is, even though you have these types of really, really short scripts you can use, you can make up your own for any lesson in the 30, especially the intro ones, like Peter and the Fish, Elijah and the Ravens, all these things, because we already know all the things that don't make sense with it, but you can bring that up first and say, hey, we're going to talk about this today for today's Bible study, this, and this, and see if people get interested or not. There's no guarantee that it's not going to work on 100% of the people. However, it's going to be something I do think that that at least you'll have something to say. You'll prepare yourself for this too. Okay? So big point here is don't just, memorize it. You got to practice saying it constantly all the time. That's what it is. Right? So I hope it's something that will help you guys out when it comes to evangelism. Evangelism season is just around the corner. New semesters are starting in the Western countries because we start usually in end of August and September. So I hope that you guys can practice, get that going, and maybe you can use that to meet people and bring them to the words of God. All right? So there it is, guys. That is today's Evangelism Scripts word study. Hope it's something that you gained a lot from. Please have a wonderful and awesome day. If you have any other questions or any other evangelism scripts that you want me to work on, go ahead and tag me on that too. Okay? So, that is today's word study. So before we get into Health is Happiness, which is tips for people in their 20s, part 2, let's get into the last music break of the day.
Yeah, Providence is true, represents Sierra West Africa.
In 1945, the man on mission was born. 1978, he started his work. He teaches us the word of the time period. We listen to the word and then we realize that's finally have become a bride. We have become a bride. That finally we have become a bride. So now we are raptured. Now we are raptured. I said bride. Now we are raptured. I said bride. Now we are raptured. I said bride. I met the man on the mission. I had his word and took action. My spirit is made as a bride. Now we are raptured. Hey. I met this man on the mission. I had his word and took action. My spirit is made as a bride. Now we are raptured. I said right now we are raptured. I said right now we are raptured. I said right now we are raptured.
Now I'm a bride, you are a bride. We all are brides and now I will rapture. Now you will rapture. We all rapture together in this mission. So God be the glory. Here is the time of the bride. The time we need to smile. The time we need to come together and live a life. So God be the glory. Cause now I live a holy. We have to tell a story. Now we have a victory.
Now we are raptured. I said right now we are raptured. I said right now we are raptured. I said right now we are raptured. Now we are raptured. I said right now we are raptured. I said right now we are raptured. I said right now we are
Now we raptured as a bride. Put your life on the line. Take the word of the man on mission. Put them in your mind. The word we've been waiting for. Now is the time. Now is the time we're gonna say.
Now we are raptured. I said right now we are raptured. I met the man on the mission. I had this word and took action. My spirit is made. I said right now we are raptured. Hey. I met this man on the mission. I had this word and took action. My spirit is made. I said right now we are raptured. I said right now we are raptured. I said right now we are raptured.
It's Kima on the mix.
Okay, so let's get into today's final segment on this Wednesday podcast. And as we do every single Wednesday, it is Health is Happiness from all of our wonderful PROVI doctors in the Western countries. Today, once again, it is Dr. Zinni from Canada, and she's going to give us health tips for people in their 20s. And this is part 2. If you want to listen to part 1, go ahead and listen to it from last Wednesday's Health is Happiness. All right. So without further ado, from Canada, this is Dr. Zinni with Health is Happiness.
Hi everyone, it's Dr. Zinni here, and welcome to episode 36 of Health is Happiness. So on the last episode, we started talking about the best ways to keep ourselves healthy in our 20s. Today, we're going to continue to talk about health tips in your 20s, which Pastor Sky thinks is irrelevant to him. I mean, we are living twice as long as we used to compared to back in the 19th century. At that time, no countries had a life expectancy longer than 40 years of age. So 20 was like half of that lifespan. And now that we're living in our 80s, 40s is like the new 20s. Okay. All right, back to the topic. So in the last episode, I tried to convince you it was a smart idea to learn how to cook so that you can control what you take into your body. And we discussed what ingredients and foods were good for you that was evidence-based and reduced your risk of hypertension, diabetes, obesity, heart and stroke, as well as cancers, as these are the number 1 causes of death across the world. So we talked about the importance of exercising frequently and not necessarily exercising harder. Now, don't get me wrong, exercising at high intensity has its own health benefits, but research shows that longevity doesn't necessarily require that high intensity exercise. So, as I spoke last time, it's the high volume, low to moderate intensity that is associated with a longer lifespan. Okay, what other things can we do to stay healthy? The third tip is less screen time and more nature. So this means less time staring at your phone, tablet, computer, TV, and spending more time out in nature or with nature. Or does that mean you should shut off your podcast now? Excluding the podcast, spend some time out in nature. It's often prescribed to patients with depression, anxiety, PTSD to promote better mental health. But other than mental health, there's a host of different benefits to your physical health as well. Spending time in nature can be as simple as gardening, taking a walk in the park, bird watching if you like to watch birds, interacting with animals, or hiking in the woods. So first, research has found that it increases your energy and reduces fatigue. This might be in part due to the benefits it has on your sleep. So exposure to natural light during the day helps you regulate your body circadian rhythm, making it easier to fall asleep at night. And since nature helps to increase your serotonin levels, just a reminder, serotonin is an important neurotransmitter that is found to be low in depression and anxiety. Because it helps to increase this, you will experience deeper, more restful sleep at night too. Not to mention the benefits of reducing stress and anxiety that can contribute to insomnia. So being out in nature has been shown to increase serotonin levels, but also decrease cortisol levels. Cortisol is the stress hormone we talked about on my episode on anxiety, and recall that chronically high cortisol can have a string of negative effects on your health. The next thing is that nature has also been found to lower your blood pressure. Patients with known high blood pressure walked 5 times a week for 30 minutes. They found that the group who walked between trees had a more significant improvement in their blood pressure than the group who just walked between houses. Interesting, right? So there's something more than just the walking or exercise activity that lowers our blood pressure. There's something about us connecting with nature that causes this benefit. And spending time in nature also helps with your vision. The Vision Council says that 65% of adults have digital eye strain, especially in the 18 to 30-year-old age group. This can range from dry eye issues to blurriness of the vision. And when you spend long hours staring at the screen, no doubt it can cause neck and back strain, headaches, and poor sleep. A study has shown that children who spend at least 2 hours a day outdoors are less likely to need prescription glasses than those who don't. When we go outdoors, our eyes get to flex their muscles as we work to focus on objects off in a distance. This helps to ensure the extraocular muscles get the variation and stretching that they need in order to prevent strain or overworking. But since too much sunlight can damage your eyes over time, it's still important to wear sun protection when you're outdoors. The other thing that's good about the outdoors is that the sunlight also triggers the release of 2 key neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin, through the areas of the retina. Now, since dopamine is believed to block excessive growth of the eye, which causes myopia, aka nearsightedness, having some natural sunlight can be helpful to prevent myopia. And serotonin is responsible for regulating our sleep-wake cycle, which ensures our eyes get enough rest and recovery time while we sleep. By contrast, the low unnatural lighting or blue light from our screens and the closeness of indoor objects doesn't afford our eyes the workout and natural light that it needs to stay healthy. In one Chinese study, more than 1,800 6-year-olds participated in 40 minutes of daily outdoor activity at school, and by doing so, notably reduced their incidence of myopia over a 3-year period. Another Australian study published in JAMA Ophthalmology compared the eye health of Australian youth where rates of myopia are low and Singapore children where rates of myopia were high, and found that outdoor time experienced by Australian youth was a major contributor to the lower rates of myopia. The other benefit of spending time outdoors is that it can help us achieve vitamin D levels as a byproduct. Vitamin D is an important vitamin to help absorption of calcium and phosphorus, which are 2 minerals essential for keeping our bones, teeth, and immune system healthy and strong. But when I say spend time outdoors or in nature for your health, never tan or bake in the sun or skip your sunscreen just to get vitamin D. In my opinion, there's no amount of vitamin D that is worth the trade-off of putting yourself at risk for skin cancer and damage to your skin. You can get it more safely by eating vitamin D-rich foods or taking a supplement. In Canada, Norway, or other parts of the world that are located very north of the equator, and there isn't adequate sunlight all year round, it is recommended we take in 400 to 600 international units of vitamin D per day, and you can eat vitamin D-rich foods, including things like egg yolk, fatty fish like salmon, Arctic char, rainbow trout, milk, and fortified beverages. So the next tip to stay healthy in your 20s is stay out of the sun. Whoops, did I just contradict myself? No, I should be more precise. What I mean is not stay out of the sun, but stay away from the harmful UV rays of the sun. Everything is in moderation. It's great to do outdoor sports and get some outdoor sunlight, but you want to get a decent amount of sunlight without increasing your risk of skin cancer and sun damage. So how do you achieve this? So first, it's helpful to understand the sun's UV rays in detail to see how they can cause damage. The sun's UV rays is actually divided into UVA, UVB, and UVC. UVC doesn't really get to the Earth's surface because it's absorbed by the atmosphere and blocked up by the ozone layer, so we don't really consider it a risk for skin cancer. UVA, on the other hand, accounts for over 95% of the sun's UV rays. These penetrate deeply into the second or basal layer of the skin, and UVA can penetrate through clouds and glass windows, hence it's still important to wear sun protection even on cloudy days or when driving. UVA exposure to the skin plays a greater role in wrinkle formation, photoaging, and sun damage compared to UVB. UVA causes most of the skin changes that we think of as normal part of aging. It damages the fibers in the skin called elastin, so we get elastosis, less bouncy, saggy skin. It destroys collagen by activating matrix metalloproteinases, ultimately weakening the skin. The skin also bruises and tears more easily, taking longer to heal. You get more fine and coarse wrinkles, freckles, mottled pigmentation, discoloration of the skin, and also telangiectasia, which is the dilation of small blood vessels under the skin. So while sun damage to the skin may not be apparent while you're young, it will definitely show up later in life. Now for UVB. UVB rays are not completely blocked out by the ozone layer. About 5% of the sun's UV rays consist of UVB. However, UVB is what is necessary for vitamin D synthesis in the skin, but it's also the number one culprit for skin cancers. So what does this mean in terms of wearing sunscreen? Sensible sun protection does not put people at risk for vitamin D deficiency. Sunscreens block out UVA and UVB, but not completely. Most sunscreens do not block out all of the UVB rays that are required to kick off the vitamin D synthesis. Vitamin D is made when UVB hits cholesterol in the skin. Studies show that when applied under maximal use conditions on a vacation, sunscreens do not lower vitamin D levels. And UVA actually causes photodegradation of vitamin D in the skin. So by using sunscreen that blocks UVA, you'd actually get increased vitamin D in your skin, not less, because less of the vitamin D degrades. And studies do back this up. They show that the higher the UVA protection in the sunscreen, the better the vitamin D synthesis. Since UVB radiation is a source of vitamin D, but the major cause of skin cancer, we always need to balance the risk of skin cancer from too much sun exposure while maintaining adequate vitamin D levels. If you're older, live far north of the equator, have darker skin, you would need longer and more intense sun exposure to make vitamin D. Most sources say you need uncovered skin during the period of 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. during sunny seasons for about 10 to 30 minutes 3 times a week in order to get adequate vitamin D. People of darker skin colors will need more time in order to make sufficient vitamin D because they have more melanin. Melanin acts as a natural sunscreen to absorb the UV rays to protect the skin against sunburn and skin cancers, but it also blocks the vitamin D synthesis as it absorbs the UVB. For older people and for darker skinned individuals, you may need several hours of sun exposure. So I don't recommend spending lots of time in the sun for the purpose of getting vitamin D. I would recommend instead dietary sources of vitamin D or supplements for these individuals during the winter months of inadequate sunlight. I always recommend wearing sunscreen for UV index 3 and up. I would only consider not wearing sunscreen for brief exposures on days where UV index is 0 to 2. Okay, the next health tip in your 20s is getting good sleep. But it's not necessarily the number of hours you sleep, but the quality of your sleep and when you sleep. Now, I know Julius has done a 4-part series on sleep already on Health is Happiness, but I promise you I will distill the key points on good quality sleep next time, and we'll continue to talk about other health tips in 20 and up, relevant to Pastor Sky. So take care, everyone. Until next time on Health is Happiness.
And that's a big thank you to Dr. Zinni over there in Canada for another wonderful episode of Health is Happiness. Health tips for people in their 20s. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. You can share this with other members from around the world if you think they really need it or use some of the tips too. Okay, so there it is, guys. That is the end of today's Wednesday podcast. I hope you guys have an amazing and awesome day, and of course, an amazing and awesome Wednesday service tonight. Everyone, enjoy your day. Realize we're already halfway through August, and enjoy. That's today's Thursday podcast, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly, so let's realign. Just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this.